Hi guys, Garlic here with another 2004scape video for you. This one is going to be the second part of the Best in Slot Magic Gear guide. Obviously the first part, if you've not seen it, go and watch that. That goes through all of the armor and the weapons and equipment slots, necklaces, amulets, all that sort of thing. But I thought it was getting too long, so I would split off and do the second part. And this one is going to cover all of the weapons, so all of the staves and the wands, as well as all of the spells that are out in the game right now, and also ones that are coming out in the future. We're going to talk about the differences between them, which ones are better to use, and then obviously as new ones come out in the future, which ones will become the best in slot once they're released. So we're going to start off with going through some of the simple weapons that are already in the game, and we'll move on and progress through the timeline. And the first things that I want to talk about are just going to be the staffs, like the basic staffs. So these are going to be your elemental staffs. Now there is the basic normal staff and normal battle staff. I'm not going to include those because they're kind of not really worth your time, and like if you're going to get one of them, there's literally no point in just not using one of these instead. They're super easy to get. You just go buy them from a shop for the normal ones. So let's get into this. First of all, we're going to talk about the normal staffs. So this is going to be the Staff of Air, Staff of Water, Staff of Earth, and Staff of Fire. Obviously, these staffs just provide an infinite number of the type of rune that staff is. So, for example, the Staff of Fire provides unlimited fire runes for any of the spells that you want to cast. And these are nice because they let you auto-cast spells on the normal standard spellbook. So, obviously, if you want to start off with a Fire Strike and you get yourself a Staff of Fire, you'll be able to auto-cast that spell without having to manually keep clicking it from the spellbook itself. Now, the normal staffs you can buy from Zaf Superior Staffs in Varrock. They're super cheap. I think they're like 1k to 1.5k. And these are sort of like the starter staff that you're going to want to start out with. Now, the attack bonuses on these, they're a little bit odd, so they do give like a little bit of melee bonuses. So they give like a +3 stab, a -1 slash, a +9 crush, and then for defense they give a +2 stab, +3 slash, and +1 crush. And they do give a +6 strength bonus, but obviously that's not really the reason you're going to be buying one of these staffs. You're going to want to use it for the magic bonuses. So the normal Staff of Fire does give a +10 magic and a +10 magic attack and a +10 magic defensive bonus. And obviously all of these staffs are identical stat-wise. It's just depending on which type of rune you want the infinite number of to be able to cast a specific spell. So that is the Staff of Fire, Staff of Water, Staff of Earth, Staff of Air, and then you can also get the Battle Staffs. So these are elemental staffs as well. They act in exactly the same way as the normal staffs do, but these require level 30 attack and level 30 magic to wield, and these give a little bit of an update on, a little bit of an improvement on the melee stats, but the magic stats are the same. So these ones will give you a +7 stab, -1 slash, +28 crush, attack bonus, and then +2, +3, +1 in stab slash crush for defensive bonuses. These do give a +35 to strength bonus, which is pretty crazy for a staff. But again, you're not really going to be wanting to use these for that. And if you look on the old school wiki, it will say that it has a +12 magic attack and defensive bonuses. This was changed in September 2021. So in fact, in 2004scape, they do only give a +10 magic bonus. So they are identical to the normal staffs in terms of the magic bonuses they give. You can get battle staffs by basically buying a normal battle staff without an orb on from Zaf or the Wizards Guild, and then you can basically go and attach a particular orb to it, whether that be fire, earth, water, or air, and you can make those orbs yourself through crafting. So you would make molten glass, blow the glass into unpowered orbs, and then you'd have to take those orbs to the obelisks and use the charge orb spell to be able to charge them into a particular orb and then attach them to the battle staffs. But there isn't really a reason to be using these. I wouldn't say, like, okay, maybe if you're like fighting something and you think you might end up staff bashing something if you run out of runes, like, I guess then like it's kind of worth using. But honestly, like, it is exactly the same as a normal Staff of Fire. If we're talking about the Fire Battle Staff, it's exactly the same as a normal Staff of Fire when it comes to the magic bonuses. So no real reason to get any of these. And it's a similar case for the Mystic Staffs as well. So, for example, we're going to talk about the Mystic Fire Staff here. Exactly the same. So it's an elemental staff, requires level 40 attack and 40 magic to wield. And you can obtain these by taking a Fire Battle Staff to Thormac after completing the Scorpion Catcher. And you pay him 40,000 GP and he will turn it into a Mystic Fire Staff or Mystic Air, Water, or Earth Staff, depending on which one you take there. Now, the stats on these ones are a little bit different. I mean, they're basically not that different really, but they do have like much higher melee bonuses. So for example, the Mystic Fire Staff here has a +10 stab, a -1 slash, a +40 crush attack bonus, and then has a +2, +3, +1 in the stab slash crush defensive bonuses, and it has a whopping +50 strength bonus, which is pretty crazy. But again, on the old school wiki, you will see that it says +14 to magic attack and defense bonuses. That was added in September 2021. They do only give a +10 in 04. So that's the normal staffs. So Staff of Fire, Fire Battle Staff, Mystic Fire Staff, and this can apply to all of the other elemental staffs as well. They're all identical stat-wise. They're basically just use the normal staffs. If you have a Mystic or a Fire, if you have a Mystic or a Battle Staff one, just alch it for the money and use a normal one. There is literally no benefit to using the Battle Staff or the Mystic Staffs unless you are planning to like use them in melee for some reason. But other than that, like they're literally identical when it comes to the magic attack bonuses. And obviously these staffs are going to be used mainly for casting the elemental spells in the standard spellbook. So I guess we can go into a little bit more detail about those spells. So we can go through the different elemental spells in the standard spellbook and talk about the differences between them, the DPS, the max hits, that sort of thing. And then what I'll do is we'll move on, because there are some more sort of niche staffs that can only cast one specific spell. So we'll go through the main elemental spells now, and then we'll go through and continue comparing those spells with a normal staff of whatever against these more niche staffs and their niche specific spells. So we're going to start off with the strike spells. Obviously, these are the first spells that you can cast on standard spellbook, and at level 1 magic, you can cast the Wind Strike spell, requiring 1 Mind Rune and 1 Air Rune. So obviously, get yourself a Staff of Air and then just some Mind Runes, and you'll be able to cast this spell. And this has a maximum hit of 2. And then at level 5, you can move on to the Water Strike spell, which is the same as the Wind Strike spell, but requires an additional Water Rune, and this has a max hit of 4. And then the Earth Strike at level 9 requires 2 Earth Runes, 1 Air Rune, 1 Mind Rune, and this has a max hit of 6. And then the Fire Strike spell at level 13 requires 2 Air Runes, 3 Fire Runes, and a Mind Rune, and this has a max hit of 8. Now, magic spells, especially at the lower levels, have the potential to hit a lot higher than you would hit with the same level in ranged or melee. So, for example, at level 13 in ranged or melee, you would not be hitting 8s as a max hit, but with magic you can with Fire Strike. So this is why magic is so powerful, especially at low levels, because you can really kill higher level things without really having too high of a magic level. So those are the strike spells. They're pretty decent for the low level, but obviously once you get past these, they become a bit redundant. They're not very strong. So after the strike spells, we can move on to the bolt spells. And at level 17, you will get access to Wind Bolt, which requires 1 Chaos Rune and 2 Air Runes. This has a max hit of 9. And then at level 23 magic, you get access to Water Bolt, requiring 2 Air Runes, 2 Water Runes, and a Chaos Rune. Has a max hit of 10. Earth Bolt at level 29 magic requires 2 Air Runes, 3 Earth Runes, 1 Chaos Rune, and this has a max hit of an 11. I'm sure you can see where this is going. And then Firebolt at level 35 requiring 3 Air Runes, 4 Fire Runes, and a Chaos Rune, and that has a max hit of 12. Now, the Bolt spells are interesting because if you wear the Chaos Gauntlets from the Family Crest quest, which they do require level 59 magic, but they will increase the maximum damage of all the bolt spells by a +3, which basically makes them about as strong as the blast spells that we're about to talk about. So something to keep in mind there. So Chaos Runes are going to be a bit cheaper than the Death Runes used for the blast spells, but I think we've gone over this before in previous videos. The Chaos Gauntlet's probably not worth taking because you won't be able to choose to switch to any of the other ones for a long time. So I probably wouldn't recommend that, but if you are interested, you can increase the max damage of the bolt spells with the Chaos Gauntlets. And as we mentioned, the blast spells here, level 41 magic, you get access to Wind Blast, and this has a max hit of 13. Water Blast at level 47 magic, requiring 3 Air Runes, 3 Water Runes, and a Death Rune for a max hit of 14. Earth Blast at level 53 magic with 3 Air Runes, 4 Earth Runes, and a Death Rune, max hitting a 15. And then Fire Blast at level 59 magic, requiring 4 Airs, 5 Fires, and 1 Death Rune, and that does have a max hit of 16. So you can see the max hits go up quite nicely with these elemental spells, and not too high of a magic level. And then finally we can move on to the wave spells. Now these require much higher magic levels, and they do require blood runes. So I don't know whether many people are actually going to be using these, because I feel like the only way, they're so expensive. I think the only spells people will be using that require blood runes are probably going to be the god spells, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if you did want to use the wave spells, you get Wind Wave at level 62, requiring a blood rune and 5 air runes, and that has a max hit of 17. Water Wave at level 65 magic, requiring 5 airs, 7 waters, and a blood rune, max hitting 18. Earth Wave at level 70 magic, requiring 5 airs, 7 earth runes, and a blood rune, and that has a max hit of 19. And then Fire Wave at level 75 magic, requiring 5 airs, 7 fires, and a blood rune, and that has a max hit of 20. So obviously quite a large range of max hits if we're going all the way from the strike spells all the way up to Fire Wave. But there you go. And obviously you would just pick whichever elemental staff was using the runes that you were casting the spell of. So for example, if you were casting an earth spell, you'd use an earth staff, and so on and so forth, unless air runes happen to be more expensive than the other elemental rune for that spell. So for example, if you wanted to cast Water Wave, and that requires 5 air runes and 7 water runes, you're most likely going to want to use the Staff of Water. But if it did happen to be the case that 5 air runes were more expensive than 7 water runes, then obviously you would switch and use the Staff of Air, because they all give identical magic bonuses. You're just literally trying to save as much money on runes as possible by your choice of which elemental staff you use. So those are the elemental spells from strike up to wave, and we are now going to go and talk about some of the other more niche spells, and we'll sort of compare them roughly to which elemental spell they're kind of on par with when it comes to the max hit. Some of them do have additional effects that would mean you would want to choose them over the elemental spells in certain cases, and some of them are just going to be better, some of them are just going to be worse. So we'll go through and talk about those spells now. So the next staff/spell we're going to speak about is a bit of a niche one, because it can only cast a single specific spell, and that is going to be the Ibans Staff. Now, the Ibans Staff obviously is used to cast the Ibans Blast spell, and you can obtain this staff after doing the Underground Pass quest, and the Ibans Staff requires level 50 magic and level 50 attack to wield it, and you will be able to use the Ibans Blast spell. Now, this spell does require 5 fire runes and a death rune, and you have to have the Ibans Staff equipped. You cannot cast the spell without this staff. And Ibans Blast is very nice because it has a max hit of 25, which does obviously mean that it can hit higher than the max hit of Fire Wave. So Fire Wave requiring level 75 magic, and Ibans Blast only requiring level 50 magic, and you can obviously hit higher than Fire Wave with this spell. But obviously, the problem with this is going to be that in 04, it's very difficult to recharge the Ibans Staff. So the Ibans Staff has charges when you use it, and obviously in old school, you can pay to upgrade it to increase the number of charges it holds, but you cannot do that in 04. So you would only get 120 charges, and that's not a lot of casts, and it's such a pain to run all the way back through the Underground Pass to recharge this staff. I don't think anyone's really going to be using it. I think that kind of kills it off. I know a lot of people really like using this staff at Barrows, but going and recharging this staff is such a pain that I don't think anyone's really going to use it very much. The staff itself is like decent. It has the exact same stats as a Mystic staff. So it does have that plus 10 magic attack and defense bonus, and it has like the plus 40 crush and the plus 50 strength bonus. So it is basically just a Mystic staff, but it can only cast Ibans Blast. So I guess if you can be bothered to keep recharging it constantly, then it is a good staff, and the spell is good to use because it is better than Fire Wave. But I think just the awkwardness of recharging is just going to make it a non-starter, really. So Ibans Staff, in general, pretty good, but probably not worth all of the hassle it actually requires to use this spell. So let's move on to another option. And that option is going to be the Slayer's Staff. Now, obviously, this one isn't in the game just yet, but it will get added in January 2005 with Slayer. And this staff requires level 50 magic and level 55 Slayer to wield. So even when Slayer just comes out, you're going to have to train your Slayer up a little bit to be able to actually use this. And you can buy this staff for 21,000 GP from any Slayer Master. It's quite an interesting one because you can auto cast the Magic Dart spell with this. And Magic Dart is an interesting one, also has the same requirements as the Slayer Staff, obviously because you need the Slayer Staff to cast it. And it's interesting because This is, I think, the only spell that actually like scales the max hit with your magic level. All the other spells tend to just have a max hit, and as soon as you can cast a spell, you have the opportunity to actually hit that max hit. And then once you get higher magic level, then you can't hit. It doesn't improve the max hit. But for Magic Dart, it does. So between level 50 and 59 magic, it has a max hit of 15. Between level 60 and 69 magic, it has a max hit of 16. Between 70 and 79 magic, it has a max hit of 17. Between 80 and 89 magic, it has a max hit of 18. And between 90 to 99 magic, it has a max hit of 19. If you were to boost your magic level higher, over 99, then you would end up getting the max hit of 20. But this one's an interesting one because it's quite good for low-level players to use, and also it doesn't require any elemental runes. It requires 1 death rune and 4 mind runes. And the Slayer Staff itself does have a plus 12 to magic attack bonus and a plus 10 magic defense bonus. It does have a little bit of some melee bonuses. The only real notable ones are going to be a plus 25 crush attack and a plus 35 strength bonus. But obviously, we're not really too fussed about the melee stats on these staffs. But yeah, this is kind of a nice one because it's not too expensive to use. And the max hits are pretty decent. So, you know, at level 50, you can max hit a 15. If we were to compare that to the elemental spells, a water blast at level 47 can max it at 14, and an earth blast at 53 can max it at 15. So it's kind of online with the blast spells. And then obviously, as you get higher levels, the elemental spells do start to come a little bit better because a fire wave can max out at a max hit of 20, whereas the magic dart at level 75 would only be able to max it up to a 17. So it's sort of okay to use at lower levels when you first get it, and then it sort of becomes a little bit more redundant at the higher your magic level becomes. But I guess it's going to depend on how expensive the runes are at the time. I know runes are quite expensive in 04 right now, so maybe a 1 death and 4 mind runes is maybe a little too expensive at the moment, but you'll have to see what happens to rune prices when Slayer comes out. Because this could be a contender for sure. And obviously a pretty easy one to get hold of, not too many requirements once you've hit that Slayer and Magic level. But that's sort of Magic Dart and the Slayer Staff. We're going to talk about the God Staffs next. All of the God Staffs, I'll start out by saying, have identical stats. So they give only a plus 6 magic attack and plus 6 magic defense bonus, so not too good compared to the other staffs, but these God spells are incredibly good. So to get the God Staff, first of all, you have to do the Mage Arena minigame at the Mage Bank in the Wilderness, and you have to go and kill Collodium, and then you will get given 1 staff of your choice for free and a magic cape of your choice, and then you will be able to cast the God spells in the Mage Arena. But if you want to be able to go and cast them outside of the Mage Arena, you'll have to go in there and cast the spells 100 times each for each individual spell to unlock them, and then you can use them outside to mostly PK with, I think, is what people use these for. I don't really see these being very useful for, just like killing monsters, but for PKs especially, these are very popular. Now, all of the staffs are identical stat-wise, but the spells are slightly different. So, Saradomin Strike you can use with the Saradomin Staff. This requires level 60 magic, and it takes 4 air runes, 2 fire runes, and 2 blood runes. And this one basically acts as sort of like a mini smite. So doing damage with this will drain your enemy's prayer points on a successful hit. And it has a max hit of 20 for now. I'll go over that in a second. So max hit of 20 for that. Claws of Guthix requires 4 air runes, 1 fire rune, and 2 blood runes, and this one lowers your target's defense level by 1 plus 5% on a successful hit. And then the Flames of Zamorak requires 1 air rune, 4 fire runes, and 2 blood runes, and this one reduces your target's magic level by 1 plus 5%. So you've got a bit of a choice there depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're PKing, obviously they're all pretty good. You've got the Saradomin Strike to drain people's prayer. You've got the Flames of Zamorak to drain their magic level, which is nice because you'll be able to hit more often because it will drain their magic defense. And then obviously you've got the Claws of Guthix to just drain their normal defense, so you could go in for a spec maybe, or switch to ranged or melee and keep doing more damage that way. All of these spells, again, require level 60 magic, and they all have a max hit of 20, but you can use the charge spell, which will increase the max hit. Now, the charge spell does require level 80 magic, so it doesn't have a particularly low requirement, but if you did get the 80 magic and you can cast the charge spell for 3 air runes, 3 fire runes, and 3 blood runes, and this is super, super nice because it increases the max hit of the god spells to 30, which is absolutely crazy. So without charge, at level 60 magic with the god spells, you can hit a max hit of 20, which is nice because you'd need another 15 magic levels to be able to cast Fire Wave to get that same max hit of 20. But once you use the charge, it just like blows the elemental spells out of the water. You got an extra 10 to your max hit, which is crazy, crazy damage. Obviously, you're probably going to just only be using these if you're PKing. So if you're looking for magic to use outside of PKing, the god spell is probably not what you're looking for, but the damage is just absolutely crazy with charge. You can like hit back to back to back 30s and just like combo someone out very, very easily with that. So god spells, super, super nice, very, very powerful. After that, though, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about some more staffs that aren't elemental staffs, but you could still consider using because of the magic attack bonuses. So we'll go through a few of those, and then we'll talk briefly about some of the ancient magic spells as well. So we're going to move on and talk about some staffs that aren't in the game yet still, but are going to be added sort of probably like around 2005. A couple in 2006, quite a ways away for some of them, but I thought we'd just cover them all for the sake of this video. And first of all, we're going to talk about the ancient staff, a very, very iconic staff. I really love the look of this. And the Ancient Staff basically requires level 50 attack and 50 magic to wield after completing Desert Treasure. So obviously not going to be able to have access to this until April 2005. But it's quite nice. You can buy it for 80,000 GP from Iblis after completing the quest. And the stats on this are pretty decent. You have a plus 15 magic attack and defensive bonus. And obviously before you get access to those, that update for the elemental staves in old school, this was always like super, super good. Quite a big, an increase of plus 5 over the normal elemental staves for the ancient staff. And it's just pretty good. I mean, there's not too much else to go over. Like, it does have like the plus 40 crush and the plus 50 strength bonus of like the mystic staffs. But obviously that didn't, that we're not really considering melee stats in this. The ancient staff, only really going to be used for ancient magics. I'm not going to lie. I mean, like, you can't auto-cast standard spells with this. I know you can in old school, but that wasn't the case when it first got released. So it's going to be really, really nice. When we get ancient magics, I'm pretty sure we're going to see everyone using this for ancient magics. But until we get ancient magics, it's not going to be that good. Obviously, you can't get it until ancient magics anyway, but like, basically what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't recommend using this when casting standard spells because you can't auto-cast with it. Even if it does give you like the magic bonus, it's just going to be a bit of a hassle to manually be casting those spells. And I don't think anyone's going to be manually casting elemental spells to PK with anyway. I would assume everyone's just going to be using ancient magics instead. We will go over the ancient spells after we've gone over some of these weapons, and we'll compare the max hits with the elemental spells so you can sort of see, which is better and when you want to use each different spell. But yeah, ancient staff, 50 attack, 50 magic, comes out in April 2005 and has a plus 15 magic attack and defense bonus. Very, very nice. Obviously, in May 2005, a month later, we do get access to the Ahrims Staff, obviously from Barrows, and this is nice. It does require level 70 magic and 70 attack to wield, so a little bit of a high requirement there, and it still just has the plus 15 magic attack and defense bonuses, so basically exactly the same as the Ancient Staff in that regard. It does have some higher melee bonuses, but again, we don't really care about that, and once again, you cannot auto-cast standard spells with the Ahrims Staff. I think they changed that in old school, but you cannot do that when it gets released. And also on the old school wiki, it does have a 5% damage increase. Again, that wasn't in the game when it was released. That was added in 2017. Also, the Ahrims Staff is two-handed, which is probably a big consideration when you're choosing a magic weapon here. In 2017, it was changed to one-handed. But Ahrims Staff is two-handed, so you will not be able to use a God Book or a Mage's Book or anything like that with the Ahrims Staff when it comes out. And obviously, that shield slot can be very useful for extra magic bonus, so it's, whether you're going to want to weigh that up and use it. I think no one's going to use this, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of was dead content for a very long time. That's why they changed it in old school. I mean, it's exactly the same magic stats as an Ancient Staff, and with the Ancient Staff, you can use a shield slot item. With this, you can't. So I don't really see the point in using this. I don't think anyone will use it. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone, but it is an option there if you would like to use it. Other than that, I guess we'll move swiftly onwards to the Master Wand. Now, the Master Wand comes out in January 2006, so this is quite a ways away. Requires level 60 magic to wield. And obviously, you get it from the Mage Training Arena with Pizzazz points. So the Pizzazz points that you need for the wand itself is 240 Telekinetic, 240 Alchemist, 2,400 Enchantment, and 240 Graveyard. But in order to be able to get the Master Wand, you need to buy every other wand that comes before it. So from scratch, you would need 480 Telekinetic, 530 Alchemist, 4,800 Enchantment, and 480 Graveyard points, because you would need to buy all of the previous ones that lead up to this one. But this is very nice. It has a plus 20 magic attack and plus 20 magic defense bonus. That is all it gives you. It doesn't give you any other stats at all. So obviously, very, very nice for the magic attack bonus. The problem, again, that you get, though, is this thing doesn't auto-cast. I don't believe it auto-casts anything at all, actually. Even ancient magic spells, I think you had to manually cast. Obviously, this got changed, and you can do it in old school. But as far as I can see, you actually couldn't auto-cast with this when it came out, which is kind of an interesting choice. So there you go. There is the Master Wand. If we want to just briefly cover the other ones, we can, but there's really not too much to say. You have the Beginner Wand requiring level 45 magic, gives a plus 5 in magic attack and defense bonus. The Apprentice Wand requires level 50 magic and gives you a plus 10 in magic attack and defensive bonuses, but obviously you don't get any of the elemental rune coverage. And then the Teacher Wand requires level 55 magic, and it does give a plus 15 magic attack and defense bonus, which is pretty nice. So the Teacher Wand basically the same as the Ancient Staff there, but it's just a bit of a pain to get, and obviously you can't auto-cast ancient magics with it, so I think the Ancient Staff will probably be better there. And the Ancient Staff actually does have some, although albeit very, very low, does have some other melee defensive bonuses, so I wouldn't really recommend you using any of the other ones. The Master Wand, nice for the magic attack and defensive bonuses, but other than that, I don't know, I guess you're going to have to weigh up the convenience of auto-casting with the Ancient Staff versus the Master Wand, depends what you're looking for there. That's going to move us on to the Lunar Staff. Now, I almost didn't include this, but I thought we talked about the Lunar Armor set so much in the part 1, so it would feel wrong not to include it here, but basically the Lunar Staff, you need 65 magic and 40 defense to wield. I'm not sure why there's a defense requirement for a staff, but there you go. It comes out in July 2006, so this is a very long time away, and obviously you make it during the Lunar Diplomacy quest. It gives a plus 13 in magic attack and defensive bonuses, so like a little worse than the Ancient Staff, but like not terrible, I guess. Does give a plus 3 prayer bonus if that matters to anyone, but again, I don't really see anyone using this, to be honest. It's a bit of an annoying one to get. The requirements are weird. It's such a long time away. The other stats on it aren't great. It doesn't provide any runes, so probably not going to be used very much, I would say. But yeah, that is the Lunar Staff, I guess. And that's basically all of the magic weapons that are going to be coming out like in the next few years. I guess what we'll do now is we're going to talk about the other spells on the Ancient Spellbook, because most of these weapons I've spoken about, like the Ancient Staff, maybe the Ahrims Staff, probably not, or the Master Wand, basically, are usually used with ancient magic spells. So let's go through the ancient magic spells and compare them to the elemental spells and see sort of like how they compare. So let's start off by talking about the rush spells on the Ancient Magic Spellbook, and we'll start off with Smoke Rush. So Smoke Rush requires level 50 magic, and it will also require an Air Rune, a Fire Rune, 2 Chaos Runes, and 2 Death Runes to cast, and it has a max hit of 13. Now on top of this, the Smoke spells do have the ability to poison your target, so the Smoke Rush spell will be able to poison your target for 2 damage every time that the poison damage hits, and we can compare this to the spells on the Standard Spellbook. So a max hit of 13 on Smoke Rush automatically means that it is stronger than all of the Elemental Strike and Bolt spells, the highest of those being the Firebolt spell, which does give you a max hit of 12. Now obviously if you are using Chaos Gauntlets, then that will bump it up to a little bit of a higher max hit, but if you're not using those Chaos Gauntlets, and I think the majority of people probably won't be, then Smoke Rush is automatically better than all of those, and we can then move on and talk about the Shadow Rush spell. Now this requires level 52 magic, and it takes 1 Air Rune, 2 Chaos Runes, 2 Death Runes, and 1 Soul Rune, has a max hit of 14, and this also has the added effect of reducing the target's attack level by 10%. So obviously we can talk about just damage, raw damage stats, but you might want to consider some of the effects that these spells have as well. You know, if there is a spell on the standard spellbook that does more damage, but you're using them to PK with, for example, then these effects might actually make them worth using over the another spell that has higher damage on the standard spellbook. So we can compare this in basically the same way. Essentially, it's stronger than all of the bolt and the strike spells, and it sort of sits roughly stronger than Wind Blast on the standard spellbook, and basically the same damage as Water Blast. So that's sort of where we're looking at. And again, this is level 52 magic. Water Blast is level 47 magic, so you can get access to higher damage or around the same damage earlier on in the standard spellbook, but obviously you do have that attack drain effect on the Shadow Rush spell that is worth considering as well. Obviously, if you look at things like Ibans Blast and things like and Magic Dart, those are still going to be stronger than this. But again, it's going to be whether you're using them to PK with and those effects, whether they are worth it using for you. Also, Soul Runes, very expensive to get hold of. Next up on the list is Blood Rush. Now, Blood Rush requires level 56 magic. It takes 1 Blood Rune, 2 Chaos Runes, and 2 Death Runes, and this has a max hit of 15. It also can heal you for 25% of the damage that you inflict, which is very, very nice. It's a good way to sustain yourself, and means you won't have to go through as much food. And with a max hit of 15, again, this basically puts it on par with the Crumble Undead spell, against only undead people though. It also makes it a little bit stronger than Wind and Water Blast. It puts it at the same max hit as Magic Dart, although Magic Dart obviously only requires 4 Mind Runes and a Death Rune, so it's going to be a lot cheaper to use than Blood Rush. But again, like, this could be useful even when you're not PKing. You know, if you need to heal up against whatever you're killing with magic, then this could be a good option to use instead of the standard spellbook. And finally, Ice Rush is the last of the rush spells here. This requires level 58 magic, takes 2 Water Runes, 2 Chaos Runes, and 2 Death Runes, and this has a max hit of 16, and it can also freeze the target for 5 seconds. This is, I believe, the earliest spell, this is like the earliest magic level that you can have, earliest magic spell you can have access to, where you can actually freeze a target for 5 seconds. I know that you do have the like bind spells and things like that on the standard spellbook, but I think this is a much nicer one to use. And again, with a max hit of 16, this puts it around the same as Fire Blast. So if you're thinking about using any of the blast spells, then Ice Rush will be able to do basically the same damage, if not more, and it has that additional freezing effect as well. Obviously, Ibans Blast still going to be able to hit higher than this, but Ibans Blast, like we've spoken about, is just a bit of a pain to use because of the charges on the staff, and you can't upgrade the staff, and it takes a long time to go and run back to Underground Pass to recharge it. Obviously, again, this is level 58 magic, so the God spells are still have a higher magic level requirement, and they do hit higher than this, so that does make sense. But let's move on to the burst spells now. So we're going to start with Smoke Burst, level 62 magic for this one, 2 Air Runes, 2 Fire Runes, 4 Chaos Runes, and 2 Death Runes, and has a max hit of 17. Now, this can also poison the target, starting at 2 damage, the same as Smoke Rush does, but this hits in a 3x3 area, so these are AoE spells, the burst spells, which is very, very nice, very useful, depending on where you are and what you're trying to kill. And with a max hit of 17, this puts it above Fire Blast, still below the God spells, but you're starting to get up to the wave spells now. So Wind Wave, obviously, max hit of 17, is on par with Smoke Burst. And then if we talk about Shadow Burst, level 64 magic, requires an Air Rune, 4 Chaos, 2 Deaths, and 2 Soul Runes, so an expensive spell to cast, but does have a max hit of 18, hits in a 3x3 area as well, and again, reduces the target's attack level by 10%. So basically, the burst spells are the same as the rush spells, but just AoE, essentially, apart from ice and... apart from ice, basically, is a little bit different, but we'll get onto that in a second. But with a max hit of 18 on Shadow Burst, that's going to put us a little bit below the God spell still, but that is going to take us up to the Water Wave sort of level of damage, and we are comparing level 64 magic for Shadow Burst to 65 magic for Water Wave, so this is around the area when the magic levels start to sway in favour of the Ancient Spellbook a little bit more. And then there's Bloodburst at level 68 magic, requiring 2 blood runes, 4 chaos runes, and 2 death runes. And this has a max hit of 21, which is very nice. Hits in a 3x3 area and also heals you for 25% of the damage inflicted on targets. Now, this is good. Obviously, the God Spells require level 60 magic, but they have a max hit of 20. Bloodburst has a max hit of 21, so you can hit higher with Bloodburst than the God Spells, although if you have 80 magic for the charge spell, you'll be able to have those God Spells be hitting 30s, which again is a lot more damage. But then again, you've got the trade-off of the effects that you get from the God Spells versus the healing effect that you can get from Bloodburst. It depends what you're going to be killing, really. And then Ice Burst at level 70 magic, requiring 4 water runes, 4 chaos runes, and 2 death runes, has a max hit of 22 and hits in a 3x3 area again. And this will freeze your target for 10 seconds rather than 5. So a very, very long freeze. So that'll be interesting to see how people decide to use that. But again, max hit of 22. You're hitting higher than God Spells without the charge spell, and you are also hitting higher than Fire Wave at this point, which is kind of crazy. So, you know, Fire Wave requiring level 75 magic, Ice Burst requiring level 70 magic, so you can get a bigger max hit with a lower magic level once we get access to the Ancient Spellbook. That's going to take us on to the Blitz spells now, though. So Smoke Blitz at level 74 magic, requiring 2 airs, 2 fires, 2 bloods, 2 deaths, and a max hit of 23. And this can poison the target as well, but it starts at 4 damage rather than 2 from the previous smoke spells. Again, a 23 max hit is nice. It's higher than Fire Wave. Basically, at this point onwards from the Ancient Spellbook, we don't really have to compare it to the standard anymore because it has a higher max hit than everything there, apart from the God Spells with Charge and Ibans Blast, I suppose, as well. But other than that, we can talk about Shadow Blitz as well. 76 magic, 2 airs, 2 bloods, 2 deaths, 2 souls. Expensive spell to use. Max hit of a 24 and reduces the target's attack level by 15% rather than 10%, which is very nice. And then the Ice Blitz spell at level 82, an iconic spell for sure. 3 waters, 2 bloods, 2 death runes, and a max hit of 26. And this can freeze the target for 15 seconds. So you can see how these are just sort of slowly growing to become stronger and stronger, and they scale quite nicely. And then we move on to the barrage spells. So at level 86, you can cast Smoke Barrage, and this requires 4 air runes, 4 fire runes, 2 blood runes, and 4 death runes. Has a max hit of 27, hits in a 3x3 area, and poisons the target, starting at 4 damage. So again, this is just like how the burst spells are sort of like an AoE version of the rush spells. The barrage spells are basically an AoE version of the blitz spells. Shadow Barrage at level 88 magic, so we're really getting up there in the magic levels now, but you've got a long time until this comes out, so you shouldn't have any problems training your magic that high by the time we get these updates. But Shadow Barrage level 88, 4 air runes, 2 blood runes, 4 death runes, 3 soul runes, and has a max hit of 28, so we really are starting to encroach on the max hit of the God Spells with Charge now. Hits in a 3x3 area and reduces the target's attack level by 15%. And then Blood Barrage at level 92 magic, halfway to 99, requiring 4 bloods, 4 deaths, and 1 soul rune, has a max hit of 29, hits in a 3x3 area, and heals you for 25% of the damage inflicted. And then at level 94, you will know it was coming, Ice Barrage. Everyone wants this spell when they're PKing. 6 water runes, 2 blood runes, and 4 death runes are required to cast it, but it does finally come on level with the God Spells with Charge. It has a max hit of 30, and it hits in a 3x3 area and freezes the target for 20 seconds. So that is obviously a very high magic level requirement, but it is a very, very strong spell. So that is kind of the standard and the ancient spellbooks compared. Like I said, you can kind of see there like what level it's worth switching over to ancients rather than using the standard spellbook, but you do have to keep in mind that a lot of the ancient spells are a lot more expensive to cast because they require a large number of either death runes or blood runes or soul runes, even some chaos runes as well for the rush spells there and the burst spells as well. So it's kind of a situational thing. I think ancient magics really are kind of designed for PKing rather than killing anything else. But there are a few exceptions there, maybe using the blood spells to heal yourself up, to sustain yourself longer, depending on what you're going to kill. But again, the standard spellbook by no means is sort of like just overshadowed completely. Definitely still has its uses in the game. And finally, it wouldn't be a complete magic guide when we're talking about spells if I didn't mention Vengeance. Now, obviously, there are a lot more spells on the Lunar spellbook, but they're not really sort of used very often. And when they are, they're not really like combat based, they're more like utility based. So I'm not going to go over all of the lunar spells, but we will mention Vengeance because it's been such a big part of the game, especially when PKing. And it was added in on the 24th of July 2006, so it is a very long way away, but it requires level 94 magic, and you need to do lunar diplomacy for it, obviously. And this basically will reflect 75% of damage taken in the next hit back to the person dealing it. So you can only cast it once every 30 seconds, but when you do cast it, obviously it was very good for Darot PKing, because if they're low health and hit a massive number on you and you venge it back onto them, then they can end up killing themselves. So it's very, very strong in PvP. People do kind of use it for PVM sometimes in old school now, but I don't think it was ever really used for that back in the day. If maybe against like Hellfight Queen or something, it might be useful. But yeah, it's a classic spell. Look forward to that. Obviously, I'm not going to mention the Arceus spellbook. That was old school exclusive. So I think that basically wraps up all of the magic spells and weapons that we needed to talk about today. If you think I've missed any, then please do let me know in the comments below. Let me know which spell you're most looking forward to using and where you plan to use it. Other than that, though, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this video. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next one.